Chapter 2. That night, we all gathered in the kitchen of the manager's quarters for a celebratory dinner. As my mom prepared kung pao chicken and spring rolls, Hank stood over the stove grilling up his signature saltine burgers. I turned to my dad. "Was there any meal for me?" I asked. As a matter of fact, there was," he said. "I put it in your room." Just then, Lupe's mom and dad arrived with a pot full of tamales. Lupe stayed in the kitchen to help her dad, but I escaped to my room and quietly closed the door behind me. My heart thumped as I walked up to the envelope sitting on top of my dresser. Carefully, I tore it open. Here goes. Dear Mia, thank you for submitting your work to the opinion section of the Los Angeles Gazette. The editors regret to say it does not suit the needs of our newspaper at this time, and we are unable to publish it. We wish you well, and we thank you for thinking of our newspaper. Kind regards, the editors, Los Angeles Gazette. I blinked my eyes hard before a tear could escape. Stop it, I told myself. Getting a rejection is normal, part of being a professional writer. Except it wasn't my first. It was my 79th. Ever since the piece I wrote on Proposition 187 was in Los Angeles Times, I've been trying to get published again. At the library, I looked up the addresses of newspapers all over the country so I could mail them my opinion pieces. And all year, the editors from those papers mailed my letters right back. The rejection all said the same thing. My writing didn't suit their needs at this time. They weren't interested in the daily going-ons at the motel, and my stories weren't serious enough. I sat down on my chair with a heavy sigh, letting the Gazette letter fall from my hand to the floor. The worst thing was, not a single person knew. Not Hank, not Lupe, not Jason, not Mom. I hadn't told them because I kept waiting and waiting for my luck to turn around. Now I was starting to think maybe I was just one-hit wonder. "Hey, Mia!" Lupe knocked on my door. "It's time to eat." "Be right there," I called. I took the letter and stuffed it deep inside my closet with all my other hidden rejections. Walking back into the kitchen, I watched my mom's face melt as she bit into Hank's burger. "This is the best burger I've ever had," Mom proclaimed. Hank chuckled. "Well, you deserve it. Congratulations." Mom pointed to the dark circles under her eyes. "I look like a panda. I've been studying so hard, I was so worried I wouldn't pass." "I was worried for a second," my dad said, holding a can of cream soda up for a toast. "To my brilliant wife, who as of today is officially on the main road." He leaned over and hugged my mom. "I'm so proud of you." "Here, here," we all said, and clinked soda cans. Lupe reached for a spring roll as I helped myself to a tamale. "What are you doing in your room for so long?" Lupe asked. "Just homework," I lied. Turning to my mom, I said brightly, "So, do you know where you're going to be teaching?" "The letter doesn't exactly say where, but it'll be in the Anaheim Unified School District." Her eyes flashed. "Wouldn't it be amazing if I was your math teacher, Mia?" I coughed, glancing over at Lupe. "Bethany Brett would love to see that." "Or mine," Lupe said quickly. "I think you should be mine." My dad chuckled. "You've already got kids fighting to be in your class." "When do you start?" asked Mrs. Q, one of the weeklies. "Right after we get back," Mom grinned at me and Dad. "I can't wait to see the look on my sisters' faces when I tell them." Ever since my mom's sisters turned her down for money when we were trying to buy the motel 2 years ago, things had been a little tense. I was glad Mom had something great to tell them. If only I had the same. Just think, maybe one of these days we'll be finally able to buy one of the houses with a white picket fence we've been looking at, Mom said eagerly. I nodded. After our weekly Sunday breakfast at the kanji shop, my parents and I drove to open houses. We didn't have enough money to buy a house yet, but Mom said it was important to visualize what we wanted to achieve. Maybe one day, soon, we wouldn't just visualize, we'd actually achieve. The front office doorbell rang. Dad got up to go deal with the customer while Hank updated everyone on the travel agency project. We'll find something, Jose encouraged him. Even if we don't partner with a travel agency, we're doing fine. We've been killing it. Because the Topaz and the Lagoon are both closed. But when they reopen, Hank shook his head. Billy Bob swatted the concern away. When they reopen, you'll still have to drive by us to get to them. Remember, in real estate, it's location, location, location. Yep, I seconded. I seconded. I heard that expression from several real estate agents at open houses. Mom craned her neck looking toward the front office. What's taking him so long? The food's getting cold. I'll go get him, Hank said. Billy Bob clicked on the television to check the latest scores from the Dodgers game. What I miss? What did I miss? My dad asked, sitting back down at the kitchen table. He looked around for the sweet chili dipping sauce to dip the spring rolls in. Oh, sorry, I didn't have time to go to 99 Ranch to buy the chili sauce this week, Mom said. Don't worry about it. I can run over to the Asian Mart after dinner and get some, Dad said, referring to a tiny store by the library that sold Asian spices and sauces. Jason also liked going there. I tried going there, but it was closed, Mom said. My dad raised his eyebrows. Closed? Really? He asked. He put his chopsticks down. I hope they didn't move. Mrs. T leaned in. Have you noticed all the shops changing in our neighborhood? Mrs. Q nodded, and I realized I noticed too. There's Mr. Abian's convenience store, which is now a 7-Eleven. The hair salon with giant scissors in the window by high school, which was now Supercuts. And my favorite stationery store where I got my sparkly green pencil. It's closed because it couldn't compete with the Office Depot. Hank walked back in. All good? Dad asked. What room did you give her? Hank shook his head. It was so weird. Once I took over, she changed her mind, didn't want to stay anymore. Didn't want to stay? Dad asked. In the background, the evening news took over from the baseball game. Despite efforts to improve racial tensions, the anchorman was saying, polls show that since the O.J. Simpson verdict, race relations have worsened across the country. Many Americans feel that O.J. Simpson, a black man, should have gone to jail for the murder of two white people. Frank got up and turned off the TV, while Hank sank in his chair. Every time something like that happens, he said, pointing at the TV, is like a presumption of guilt that extends to all of us black folks. Hank rubbed his weary eyes. I'm just so tired of it. Me too, I said. Gently, I told everyone what happened with the photographer at school. That's horrible, Mrs. Q said. I'm going to call up the school tomorrow and make them retake that picture, Miss Garcia said, fuming. No, please don't, Mom, Lupe pleaded. Some of the other kids already think it's weird that I'm in algebra. Why is that weird? Mrs. Garcia asked. Hank shook his head. Man, the systemic racism in this country. Billy Bob put a hand on Hank's shoulder. Maybe I need a vacation, Hank murmured. Just then, a wild idea came into my mind. Hey, why don't you come with us to China? I asked. I looked over at Mom and Dad, who nodded eagerly. That's a wonderful idea, Dad said. No, it's fine. I was just kidding. I'll be fine, Hank insisted. But why not? I asked him. You haven't had a vacation in years, and you'll love it there. You can meet my family. Think of all the great food you'll eat, my dad added. And the sights you'll see, Mrs. T hollered. The Great Wall of China. The Forbidden City, Mrs. Q added. But what about the motel? Hank asked. Jose smiled. We'll take good care of it. Don't you worry, amigo. That's right, Mrs. Garcia said. You don't have to worry about a thing. Hank looked at me and my parents. Tickets must cost a fortune, he said, and I don't have a visa. You can get a visa next week at the Chinese consulate, Dad said. I'll take you. And I'll bet you can get some cheap last-minute fares too, if you go to the right travel agent, Mom said. Don't get me started on travel agents, Hank replied, and we all laughed. Turning to Jose, Hank asked, Are you sure you guys are going to be okay without us? We'll be fine. Then Hank turned to Lupe. Don't forget to hang the special stockings on each guest room's door at Christmas with a little card and chocolate inside. Lupe crossed her arms. Hey, I work here too, remember? She asked. I got this. Hank laughed as Dad slapped his hand on the table. That settles it, he announced. I grabbed Hank's hand. Hank, you're going to China, I shrieked.